1. Let me start off by saying that my former landlady is a butthead of the highest order, as I'm sure many will agree when I relate this whole story, so here we go. During 2022, my family and I were renting a mobile home that we had resided in for nearly 9 years by 2022. We got on well with the previous landlord. He was the owner of the property, and a decent guy who always fixed things when they were broken. And if he wasn't able to, we would deduct the cost of the repairs from the rent. He didn't even make us sign a lease beyond the initial one back in 2023. We just verbally agreed to keep the rent the same, and the same agreements for repairs and whatnot. Fast forward to 2020, and I find out that the guy had passed away from COVID-related complications, and since he was childless, his ex-wife had inherited the property. Right off the mark, the lady was a pain, decrying the whole situation, stating that she really didn't want to manage a property, but seeing as we had rented from her ex for so many years, she would give it a shot for a time and see how it worked out. Husband and I listed all the issues that still needed addressing with the house. They weren't necessarily pressing issues, but they would become bigger problems in the future if they weren't taken care of soon. Cooling units needed replacing, the wiring was becoming faulty, etc. It's an old house. She assured us that she would be in touch soon to assess the issues and get started on the work that was needed. Little did we know that the landlady was making an active effort to sell the property without telling us. Every conversation with her became stilted and short, and she kept talking about how she needed to conduct an inspection of the property. Normally, a pending inspection by a landlord would not have bothered me, but she would make attempts to enter the home without giving us proper notice. In my state, it is a minimum of 48 hours notice to enter a tenant's home, and it has to be made in writing. Then one day, our water is shut off by the water company for no reason that we could determine. I contacted the water company and was told that due to a water leak on the main water line to the house, we lived about 2/3 of a mile back from where our water meter was, and the wastage we had from it, they had shut off the water to prevent further wastage. I then contacted the landlady to let her know because a repair like this was well beyond mine or my husband's capabilities. We'd repaired smaller water leaks at the house itself, but this was a larger job that we didn't have the ability to repair ourselves. The landlady assured me that she would get someone out there to fix the problem, and the water company agreed to turn the water back on based on that assurance. Weeks went by with a lot of back and forth from the landlady, always with some excuse as to why the water leak hadn't been fixed. Husband and I started looking for a new place to live that we could afford. We were in a tight situation financially, but were having no luck. Eventually, the situation came to a head when I was awoken by one of my kids. In her hand was a notice of eviction from the landlady. She had apparently just taped it on the front door and made no attempts to knock and speak with either myself or my husband. I immediately contacted her, asking her why she was evicting us, and she tried to gaslight me. She kept saying that she made numerous attempts to come inspect the property, only to be blocked by me or my husband, and so she had sold the property. She gave us 3 weeks to move out. This was the week before Christmas. Once I told my husband, he began the search for another home. To my surprise, he found one. We got approval on our application, and we moved in well before the landlady's deadline. Enter PettyRevenge. I changed all the exterior locks to the house before we left, and did not provide her with updated keys. In addition to taking with us parts to the circuit box that we had very recently replaced, that she had not reimbursed us for, I also left a note for the new owners, warning them about the water leak that hadn't been fixed. To my knowledge, no one lives there at the moment, and it's been almost a year since the property was sold. And there's not a damn thing that anyone could do, since we weren't on a paper lease because she was too determined to offload the property and didn't want to fuss with signing a lease. 2. This was way back when I was in college. One of my best friends at the time, Holly, had come to the same college as me from high school. We lived in different dorms, but Holly had a roommate and I didn't, so she spent a lot of time at my dorm. Even before we had started our freshman year, Holly had started taking massive advantage of my being an accommodating friend. She had a massive crush on this absolute clown that she worked with, who was a good bit older than us and also just an idiot. Since Holly didn't have her own car, she often bummed rides from me to go up to the place she worked on her days off, so she could follow this dude around like a lovesick puppy dog, while I just hung around and waited for her. In retrospect, as a whole-ass adult, I should have told her to take a fucking hike, but I was 18, so Holly and I went to freshman orientation at our college together and shared a room. The first night, I ended up puking my guts out all night, while Holly sat in her bed talking to this guy the entire night. On my cell phone. My parents, who paid my phone bill, weren't super happy about it, but this was in the early 2000s when everyone had minutes on their phone and Holly was running mine up. But I told them it was fine and she wouldn't do it again. Once we started our freshman year of college, she got worse. She still didn't have a cell phone of her own. This was around 2002, 2003, and I did, so she was always asking to use my phone and my computer. She also didn't have one of those to talk to this dude. I'll give him a name and call him Josh. Using my computer was one thing that didn't cost any money, although it was extremely annoying since the only time she seemed to be interested in hanging out was when she wanted to talk to him. It got worse when she started wanting to get into my room when I was in class, so she could talk to this guy. Eventually, though, she asked to borrow my phone again and I stupidly let her. My phone bill ran up again. I got chewed out by my parents and was told, quite reasonably I might add, that Holly was no longer allowed to use my phone at all, period. So I relay this to Holly and tell her it's extra shitty that she's taking advantage of me as a friend and is only interested in using my stuff. She gets angry, fucks off, and that's the end of that. But friends, it wasn't the end of that, because by this time, I was finally really angry. Not only did this bitch use my stuff and then drop me like a bad habit when the favors dried up, she also had the gall to be a total ungrateful asshole about it. It just so happened that the same time all of this was going on, Holly was chasing Josh and whispering sweet nothings into his ear, which he had finally become receptive to after months and months of her hounding him. She was also messing around with one of the guys who lived in my building. I knew this was happening, and I also knew she was emailing both of these the same sweet nothings, along with some raunchy somethings, and it just so happened that we had been the type of friends who sometimes shared passwords. So I had the password to her email. I pulled every raunchy email she sent to the guy in my building, created a sock puppet email, and emailed all of it to Josh, playing the part of a concerned coworker who didn't want to get involved, but just couldn't watch such a stand-up guy get played like that. Her shit imploded, and I never looked back. 3. For the past decade, I've been working as an IT project manager for an SMB. About 120 employees, mostly doing at-desk jobs, with almost zero business travels. However, I was the point of contact for the majority of our division's clients, most of them being either government entities or public companies based several hours from my office. These clients always demanded face-to-face meetings even for very short issues, 5 minutes tops. For that 5-minute meeting, I had to drive 2 or 3 hours to get there, resolve any issue, then drive 2 or 3 hours back to the office. Even during the pandemic, they still requested my presence. For clarification, I live in South Korea, and it takes a maximum of 5 hours to get from the northern border to the southern border, so 2 or 3 hours of driving is not a short one for us. Anyway, our company leased several cars for such travels, or that's what it was supposed to be. Management leased luxury cars, Audi, Benz, BMW, for C-level personnel's private use, typical Korean SMB. When I asked for a company car to use, they just told me to use my own car, which they did not subsidize in any way for the travels. This was my first professional job, and I just obeyed their instructions. For nearly 10 years, I drove my own car, racking up 140,000 kilometers on the odometer. Honestly, it didn't bother me that much, because they at least reimbursed me for gas and tolls. Then one day my car broke down and needed some serious and expensive couple of K overhaul. Since most of the miles were because of work, and since I worked my ass off day and night, and proved loyal to this company for 10 years, I thought my company could help with repair bills. I was so naive. The management absolutely went berserk that I had the gall for even asking for such a thing. They continued on, saying that since it was my car, I have full responsibility for it. I should of course pay for its repairs, and the company has no obligation whatsoever. Wow, I was so pissed. I know it's not normal practice in Korean business culture, but I thought they would be more understanding than this. So naturally I turned to the dark side. Now, I stated above that I was the point of contact for my division's clients. For a company with yearly sales only USD 15 million, my division was responsible for half of that. I always took calls and went to meetings on behalf of the company, did what I could best for our clients and the company, and my clients knew this. I had several weeks scheduled ahead for meetings all over the country, ranging from simple meets and greets to full-fledged project management. I decided, since they won't provide me with a car or provide support for my car's repairs, I would no longer go to the meetings. The ones with means of transportation can go themselves. So I wrote to my next day's meetings that due to unfortunate and untimely problems, I would not be able to attend the meetings. If you would set up meetings on Zoom or Teams, then I would attend it, but otherwise, I have no means of transportation and cannot be there physically. If you need a physical appearance, please contact my superiors and ask them to come over. I sent out this email every day for 2 weeks for each next day's meetings. When my boss tells me to get my ass down there, I just tell him, I have no car. Will you let me use yours? No? Then I can't go. They bitched, but what choice do I have? They did make me take a cab one time, but it cost them $400 one way. So, clients started calling my bosses to come over instead of me. Bosses had to drive several hours by themselves to meet clients countrywide. They did not have the faintest idea what stage each project was at. I, of course, had written up weekly reports with details for each project, and they skipped all but our sales. Projects went haywire, clients dissatisfied, penalty fees racking up, and eventually losing businesses. Meanwhile, I deliberately didn't fix my car until our management finally caved in and paid for the repair. Then I threw, ever so politely, in my resignation and left the company for good. So sue me. I have records. 4. I lived in a unique housing situation for half of the year in 2022, where I lived in a tiny house that was more or less a shed that looked like a bedroom, but you had to go into the main house to use the restroom, showers, and kitchen. The downstairs of that house is where I had access and where I kept my groceries. The upstairs was an Airbnb. The 2 guys renting, male, 40s, were long-term renters and had been there for years. The reason I was renting the guest house was because the owner of the house was my boss, and it came with the job, which was basically take care of the Airbnb, her dogs, her real estate staging business while she was out of the country working for her other business. I met her while I was abroad and she offered me this job. Anyway, the downstairs was my domain, as well as her boyfriends and their 2 dogs. I'd only use the downstairs for cooking, laundry, and restrooms, and other than that, kept to myself in my room, which wasn't connected to the house. I didn't get paid very much, and the arrangement was, I'll admit, a bit odd for me overall, but I was in a limbo period in life, so was along for the ride in that chapter. It wasn't so bad of a setup, except one of the upstairs B&B guys, Humphrey, would always drink my coffee, creamer, and whatever groceries of mine that he pleased. This drove me nuts. I asked him to stop more than once, and each time he would look at the floor, go non-verbal, and just run away back upstairs. This was crazy to me because this man was over 10 years older than me and was making well over $200,000 a year, while I was struggling and he knew it. He didn't stop eating my food or drinking my coffee, and even ate my boss's boyfriend's foods and drank his sodas. This happened daily. He would also just come sit in the downstairs living room, which was not his area to use, and intentionally try to annoy me. He could tell that I wasn't too keen with him, and he was like a child that just wanted to get under my skin. It was bizarre. I decided that if he wanted to play stupid games, then it was time that he won some stupid prizes. I went to the grocery and bought a pack of double-stuffed Oreos. I also bought a tube of Colgate toothpaste. Next door to the grocery store was a pet supply shop, so I went and got some fancy dog biscuits that looked like cookies. That night, I went into my room and gutted every single one of the Oreos and replaced the filling with the Colgate toothpaste. I took a couple out of the pack to make it look like I had eaten a couple and placed them on the table. I also placed the dog treats in a Tupperware container on the table. I filled my boss's boyfriend in on the scheme, and he thought it was hilarious. In less than 24 hours, Humphrey had fallen right into my trap. His annoying, loud, obvious self stomped his way downstairs for God knows what reason. He never had one. Delightfully squeals, "Cookies!" and starts munching down the dog treats. My boss's boyfriend is trying to keep it together while carrying some small talk with Humphrey. I'm in the laundry room smiling from ear to ear, knowing it's only a matter of time now. I hear the rustling of a wrapper and walk out to see Humphrey helping himself to some of my Oreos. Perfect. He looks at me flatly, doesn't say a word, and pops a cookie into his mouth and starts to go back towards the upstairs. The look of shock, hurt, and disgust on his face was priceless. Me and boss's boyfriend started dying laughing, and I managed a "Ha! That's what you get. I told you to stop eating my food." He looked embarrassed and pissed off and spat out the toothpaste-filled cookie and started wiping off his tongue like a child and said, "That's messed up." I responded quickly with a, "What's messed up is you can afford to buy your own food and then some. Well, I'm struggling and have asked you nicely to quit eating my food more than once. You blatantly continue to do so. I didn't offer you any of those toothpaste-filled Oreos or dog treats, and you just helped yourself. Fuck around and find out." His mouth fell open as the realization hit him that not only did he eat toothpaste Oreos, but also dog treats. He stopped eating my food and drinking my coffee after that. 5. So this happened a few years ago, and I will be vague since I'm still not sure if the dust is fully settled from this fiasco yet. At my former company, I was the secretary for a small improvement team that would meet monthly to discuss issues within the company and brainstorm ways to fix them. Something you need to know about me is that I was given this role because people know I am meticulous at keeping records due to HR-related issues I had at a previous place of employment. I don't think my boss realized that this careful record-keeping applied to her as well, especially when she appointed me to be secretary of this little committee. But I digress. I was a model employee, read award-winning, and went above and beyond what was asked. As were many others in my department, but we were still having customer complaints and dealt with regular safety issues due to the company at large and through no fault of our own. When we brought these concerns to our boss's attention, emails were left unread, and during in-person exchanges, we were called whiny and needy, and we were told that we needed to just deal with it. Whatever the issue, from items being stolen by customers to people being unhappy with the procedures the boss had set down for us to follow. It was always made to somehow be our fault. When we sought support from other departments, we were met with cold indifference, since the boss was great to them, and we must be exaggerating the things she said to us. Well, during an improvement meeting at the end of the fiscal year, it all came to a head. Myself and a couple of my team members dug our heels in and were insistent about the unresolved issues the boss refused to acknowledge. And she finally went off on us. She told us everyone was incompetent, didn't deserve our jobs, and that maybe customers would like us more if we were more likable. When people pressed her on safety issues, she continued to reiterate that we would just have to deal with it, and that if someone was going to die, they already would have, right? I, as the secretary, did my duty and took notes of all that happened over the course of that meeting. I usually did bullet points, but that night I was feeling a little more thorough. So I wrote down words, every word that was said, every hateful comment, denial of accountability, and idle threat was recorded in black and white. Now, a second part of my job was to distribute the notes from the improvement meeting to the rest of the company. So, come the next morning, I ran about 100 copies of the transcript of the meeting and hand-delivered them to every single department in the building, and things blew up. People from other departments who had attended the meeting were able to verify that everything I had typed up had really been said, and folks were mad, threatening to quit, refusing to do their normal duties, browsing Indeed during work, etc. My boss's boss, who worked at HQ, so I didn't get the opportunity to hand her a copy, got wind of these meeting minutes only a few hours after I had handed them out, and had an hour-long, off-the-record conversation with me about all the safety issues I had documented, all the concerns I had submitted to management in writing, and all the records I had regarding my boss's inaction. She was very grateful for the 100 pages of documentation I sent over, and thanked me for my time. The day after I unleashed Pandora's box, I put in my 2 weeks' notice, took a new job, and pieced out to greener pastures. At first, it seemed like things were calming down after I left, but the following year the company did not renew my boss's contract. I still feel a bit bad because I wasn't trying to get her fired or ruin her life. I was just desperate for some accountability thrown her way to create some positive change in the company. But at the end of the day, I just did what she asked me to do. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 321. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit that like button, it helps the channel a lot. And if you'd like to get early access to the videos, then you can support me through my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can also buy yourself some Hellfreezer merchandise, which is also linked in the description. And you can make donations during streams or videos like this one by hitting that heart with the $sign in the middle underneath the video. And while you don't have to do any of this, I very much appreciate it, and thank you kindly to everyone who has. Okay, I don't think we have any other business today, so we're going to move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Okay, this one comes from Newcomb on the Discord. You might want to cover the kids' ears for this one before I ask it. At what age did you find out the truth about Santa? And I honestly can't tell you. I think it was more of a gradual shift. I don't remember any shocking revelation. I think it was just, eventually noticing things and being like, oh yeah, of course, obviously. The truth, of course, being that Santa is real and a wonderful magical being that can be everywhere in the world in one night. I look forward to reading your answers in the comment below with any other little fun Christmassy stories you want to share. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.